Hey, I'm a little early, but you don't have to come out until you're ready. But should I just pull next to your car?
Yeah, that's fine. You can park next to my car. Are you going to be filming right from like me opening the door?
Yeah, but I'm making sure not to get any like, of your house or anything in there. Don't worry.
Oh, you can get totally anything. Knock whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'll see you soon.
Hello.
Oh my God,
How are you?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to see you. Nice to meet you. This is Bella.
Oh my gosh, hi. Nice to meet you, honey bunny. You're so cute.
Welcome to the home of the most hated trans woman on the planet. I'm sure Caitlin has that title, actually.
Most hated trans woman?
Yeah. I'm probably number 2 though, right?
I was nervous to come here.
Why?
Not to see you and talk with you. I'm really excited about that, but just about how controversial you are. And these times are so scary. But then I remind myself that my show is called Our Queer Life, and it's about everybody in the queer spectrum of life. And you are a part of that. You're a major part of that. And I thank you for letting me come here and trusting me to come to your house and stuff.
Well, I think that your interview style is like amazing. And then also when I look at a lot of your episodes, it makes me feel like these are, timepieces that are going to be looked back on like a long time from now as, they characterize the state of the LGBT community. And so that was what really pulled me in, because I don't really, if I'm honest, like let people in my fucking house. I don't, I'm a very private person, but I was like, I want to, do this because I feel like your stuff's going to be looked back on in a very specific way in the future. And I think it's going to be very good. You mentioned that I'm a big part of like the current community. And sometimes I feel like I'm not. And then I remember I actually am one of the biggest trans creators on the planet. And like the controversy is the controversy, but that's always been my brand. I've always just been outspoken. I've always just said exactly what I feel, right, wrong, or indifferent. And I'm the first one to say I'm not always right, but I am most of the time.
You know what's funny is that when I had decided to interview, or when you accepted my interview, which thank you, I reached out to some trans people that have been on my channel or just trans women in my life because I wanted to hear, their response to me interviewing you, because I didn't want to do something that alienated myself from people that I love or that have been on my channel. And to be honest, they all said that they love you. And I was like shocked to hear that, because I know you get so much hate from our community, but do trans women love you?
They do, mostly in private. I get a lot of like, I agree with you, but I can't say it.
This is a gorgeous, like very safe area though. Like it's very guarded.
Yeah, I live in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Kind of, it's definitely not in, people know I live in Austin, but like they don't know I kind of live like outside of Austin.
Is that for your safety?
Oh, for sure. I mean, the internet's crazy.
I feel like right now I'm in the midst of like an era where people are coming around to me, which is interesting because I'm so used to being like the black sheep. But I think that just the state of the world and like trans has become such a huge part of public discourse. And I think that a lot of people in the community are sort of coming around to the idea that like maybe the way the activists and the people who are sort of like the opposite of Blaire, maybe they're not necessarily doing everything right, because LGBT acceptance has been on the decline for the first time in decades, like right now. At this point, you can definitely still hate Blaire White and you can, feel like my tactics are wrong, but you can't necessarily make the argument that the current set of activists we have are effective.
So how long have you lived here for?
I have lived here for 2 years.
Because you moved from LA, right?
Yeah, I was a Hollywood baby and then I moved, and it was actually the best decision of my life because I just got so jaded with Hollywood. I got very just kind of over the political climate there, first of all, because I am a Republican, then also the social climate shit and the influencer shit. I was like, I need to go somewhere fucking real, and I just like be around real people.
But Austin's really liberal too, isn't it?
It is, but the best thing, what we say is it's surrounded. So like Austin's blue, but Texas is obviously very red. So I think you get the best of both worlds. You get sort of like the like art and the good liberalism that comes out of like leftists that live here. But then you also get like the common sense legislation that comes from, Republicans, which is my opinion.
I think that there's a misconception that me being a Republican or me being on the right is performative in some way, just because it's, it is more rare in the community, but there are a lot of misconceptions about me, and there's a lot of lies about me. I think the biggest misconception is that I'm ever saying something just because it's going to get attention or just because it's, inflammatory for the sake of being inflammatory, when in reality, I feel like most of the shit I say is not inflammatory at all. It's just people are so fucking sensitive now. Oh, Blaire's not saying exactly what Laverne Cox, Janet Mock, and Carmen Carrera are saying, so she must be doing it for attention. And it's like, or wouldn't it be more likely that I would be doing it for attention if I was just following the footsteps of every other trans person?
Well, it's more of the fact that like you get so much success because of your controversial views. So I think people think that you're a grifter or whatever the words are going to use to describe you because you're able to afford this by sharing your controversial views.
Right. So I think that I definitely got the word grifter launched at me for like so long. And I still do sometimes, but I feel like it's a lot less now because at this point I've been doing it for almost 8 years. And it's like, okay, at this point it's like, this bitch has been saying the same shit since 8 years. I've been very consistent too. That's the other thing. When I think of grifters, I think of like so many political commentators I've seen come into it having one set of opinions. And because, you know, the popularity of those opinions change over time, they switch up.
I did see a lot of comments from people saying, you know, you're kind of like the Candace Owens of the right side, where it's like they have their token trans person that they're like, oh, we accept trans people because we have Blaire White. How do you feel about that?
Listen, I get it. But my whole thing is like, I actually agree with liberals when they say that representation matters. So why wouldn't you want a trans person giving representation on the right-wing side of things? Why wouldn't you want someone with a seat at the table, at least a little bit? I'm not mainstream by any means. I'm such an internet person. Like, I've never been on Fox News. I'm blacklisted from Fox News. So I get it, but also, like, I'm not going to mute my beliefs because I don't want people to call me a fucking token. I'm happy with exactly who I am. And I can honestly say that for the first time, like in the past year or so. I feel like I've really sort of come into my own in the past year and kind of accepted a lot of things about myself. Like for example, that I'll never be that like, I'm on Fox News, like never.
Did you want that?
There was a certain point in my career where I was like, you know, why are influencers with like 10,000 followers going on Fox News? And I get it now.
I always thought it was because Fox News wasn't offering you the money that you're going to make by yourself talking on your own YouTube channel. I'm surprised that Fox News hasn't courted you.
No. It's me and my little channel that could, and like my fans, which it sounds so corny. And whenever I hear celebrities or influencers talking about how much they love their fans, I'm like, okay, yeah.
But who are your fans? I watch your channel sometimes, and I know a lot of other people probably do that don't announce that they watch your channel, because I think it's good to hear both sides. Yes, I'm a liberal, but I'm also like, I want to hear both sides. I like to learn. I like to grow. I like to make my own opinion. So who watches your channel?
I feel like I have created and earned this like really cult-like fan base because my longevity doesn't really make sense, because yeah, I have 1 million subscribers and that's a lot of people. However, I don't have 30 million like Jeffree Star. I don't have 20 fucking million like Mr. Beast or whatever the fuck they all have. You know what I mean? But for whatever reason, for 8 years, my fans have been so fucking consistent. It's like I make more money now than I have in the first 8 years.
But I do wonder, I was curious, like, are brands worried to tie themselves to you because of your controversial views and stuff? Because I do realize you get a lot of brand deals, especially on your podcast. It's like ad after ad after ad. So you're making money from that. Yeah. Are brands worried about tying themselves to you?
Some of them, but frankly, I wouldn't want to fucking work with any of those brands at all. You know, it's the same thing with people, you know. I've had certain people, especially when I lived in LA, like even on a friendship level, it's like, oh my God, Blaire's so cool, but like maybe I won't post on my Instagram with her. And it's like, okay, well maybe I won't be your friend at all. You know what I mean? So if you're not willing to own that you're like fucking with Blaire White, I'm not gonna own that I'm fucking with you, because who the fuck are you?
Will you show me around?
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm excited.
Okay, so I told you that I wanted to show you why I'm not afraid of people. This is the gun room.
Oh my God.
And this is why I am very much not afraid of anyone, because if anyone wants to come in here, I mean, listen, we have fucking options. This is one of the best parts about living in Texas, that all of this is legal. And like I have, I think 17, no, I think I have like over 20 guns at this point.
How much are all these?
Oh, it depends. Like this little girl is maybe like $100, like super cheap, or no, $200, super cheap. But then like this one was, I believe, like $850.
Guns like literally scare me so much, but
really?
Because I've never been around them. But I'm just like, when I see a gun, I can't help but think of like the mass shootings and stuff like that. That makes me feel like, it makes my body like have a visceral reaction. You know what I mean?
Right. I totally get that, but I will say you are safer in this room than any room you've been in today, because I know how to use them, and you know, you're protected.
So these are for protection for you. So if someone was to come,
well, it started out as protection. So obviously I'm a very divisive person on the internet, and that comes with like
death threats and, fucking just crazy people. Once I moved to Texas and more shit was legal, like there's more options, it became like a collector's thing. And then that sort of like spiraled, I guess is a good word, into like my flamethrower.
Wow.
So, I could either pop someone or burn someone.
When you make a video that you know is going to be very controversial, are you worried about like the ripple effect that will have, let's say, child affirming care right now, which I know you're very against, but then it starts to snowball and that gets passed, and pretty soon you can't take hormones anymore because that gets banned. Like, are you worried about that, the ripple effect of like trans care and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, but all I can do is support the things I support publicly and being against the things I am against publicly. So I'm not going to mute myself and my very passionate feelings about how children should not be undergoing sex changes because I'm scared that maybe that might affect how easily I can get my hormone prescription in 5 years. There's this idea that like Blaire White is a selfish one, but it's like, I think it'd be more selfish to be like, I'm gonna let the kids be harmed, which is my opinion is harm, because I don't want my shit affected. It's like, no.
Honestly, I love that you're so outspoken, and I love that you stay true to your word. It is such a scary time, and it's so scary to put yourself on the internet, especially having the views you have, and it takes some real courage to do that. Like, do you ever get anxiety posting something like, oh my God, here I go, click, public?
I feel like I get more anxiety posting like Instagram pictures than I do like videos. I'll be more critical of like what I look like in a picture or a video than I am when I'm actually saying, because I know that I believe what I'm saying 100%. So if it comes down to me getting hate, that's just another fucking day for me. And it's like, I would rather get hate for being honest than get praised for lying. And by the way, there's a lot of people in the trans community that get a lot of love for lying. There's a lot of trans people in my DMs saying, please keep going. Please keep saying what you're saying. I could never say it. And then they'll be on CNN saying that they want children to have sex changes. And they're saying the opposite to me privately. So who's the liar?
Are you ever tempted to be like, will you speak out too so I'm not the only one? Or do you kind of love that you're the only one? Because
I don't love it.
You don't love it?
No. I think that the trans community is really in crisis right now. I think that there is a huge PR problem. There's a lot of really bad things happening because of the sort of stances that we have taken as a community, the concept of self-ID, the concept that sex change surgeries and hormones are appropriate for children despite all the evidence showing the opposite. And I think that we need more people to be speaking out against all that shit. So I don't love that I'm one of the only ones. There's some other really great people in the community like Buck Angel. I don't love everything Caitlyn does, but she, when it comes to like trans women in sports, she's really great with saying like, this doesn't make any sense. All it does is create hate against us. And that's really like true. When it comes to like trans women in sports, it's like, really, we can't give up football. We can't give up like swimming teams.
What's your solution to that? Because it's not fair to not let somebody play a sport if that's their passion, but then it's like, and it's not right to put them, a trans woman, in the man's sport. So what would be your solution for that?
Well, I would say that first of all, I don't think life is fair. I don't think that it's necessarily fair that I don't have the ability to use like locker rooms and stuff. Like, so for example, I go to a spa here in Austin, and I have the, I guess, legal option, because I'm legally female, to change in front of the other women in there, to shower in the same vicinity as them. But I don't do that because I would never want to make anyone feel uncomfortable, because I am pre-op. I could sit here and say, oh my God, that's not fair. And maybe that would be correct, because obviously I'm not going to harm anyone, but life isn't fair, So do I want to deny trans people the ability to play sports? Of course not. But I just feel like if there's just many of y'all that want to play sports, make a fucking trans league. We're not that far off from being able to just make trans leagues at this point. At least in major cities, right? It might get more difficult in smaller towns where there's a small trans population, but there's no reason why LA shouldn't have like trans sporting leagues, New York, even Austin. So I don't think every lane is for you, basically. It's like, I'm so comfortable with not every lane being for me.
You bring up SRS. Did you ever debate getting that?
I think for a brief period, I was sort of in the motion of things. And it's like, when it comes to transition, there is a step 1, a step 2, a step 3. And there's sort of like a narrative that's painted out that that's what you should do. And so I always, or maybe not always, but for a brief period, I thought, okay, I'm going to get on hormones, and then I'm going to get, sort of the secondary sex characteristics, and then I'm going to get a vagina. That faded away pretty quickly when I actually started doing research into the surgery. I just don't think it's there yet. And I am one of those trans people that doesn't necessarily need that to feel okay. Like, do I love my male anatomy? No. Do I hate it? No. And so as far as I'm concerned, if I'm not hating it, if I'm not waking up every day and like having mental distress over it, why put myself through a surgery that has so many complications, so many risks, and that's so extreme? I began my transition at 20, and I was not informed of the fact that I would not be able to have kids if I was on hormones without freezing my sperm. If I could make that mistake, obviously a child can. No child knows if they want to have kids or not. There's nothing wrong with telling kids, and I think it's important to tell kids, your two options are not transition or kill yourself. Like, there's a narrative that, like, people, the liberals will often say, like, do you want a trans kid or a dead kid? And it's like, why are you telling these kids that those are their two fates? You know, you're putting that in their head, when in reality, there are plenty of people that transition as adults that live very happy, fulfilled lives. And it's not some death sentence because you wait until you're a little older to understand the implications of the permanent decisions you're making, because they are permanent.
I do think also in the modern day, a lot of trans women are being outspoken about not getting the surgery. T.S. Madison's very vocal about her penis, or, you know, a lot of women I've had on my show, most women have not had the surgery. Yeah. And it's great because I feel like growing up, I always heard the narrative that trans kids grow up and they're looking at their penises and they want to chop them off because, you know, and it makes them not feel like a woman. And I think it's great that nowadays we are learning that, like, you can have a penis and still be a woman.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, is that oftentimes it takes trans people well into adulthood to even understand what they do and don't want. So, like, if I had been a child transitioner, maybe I would have gotten this surgery. Maybe I would have gotten, you know, a vaginoplasty and then been like, what the fuck did I do? Because I was 16 and someone was telling me dead kid or trans kid. You know what I mean? So, or
like, you need that to be considered a woman.
Right. Because especially when it comes to gender affirming care for minors, there's a pipeline. There's a step 1, a step 2, a step 3. Step 1, puberty blockers. Step 2, hormones. Step 3, surgery. Like, that's what it is. When you're a child, you're put through that, and like, you think you have autonomy over that and you think you're making these decisions, but are you really? Or are you going to the appointments that your parents are taking you to and you're being told things and you're assuming this is just how it goes and you're going with the flow of these doctors, you know? So much of transition is custom, you know? It's about what you want to do. And I don't know how anyone can realistically have that figured out in their teenage years.
They almost look like children's toys, which makes me even more scared.
Yeah, so everything's custom, like my face, my tits, my fucking hair. So, you know, I have the BW here. Mm-hmm. And it is what it is.
Okay, so your feeling on guns is that they should be legal completely.
Absolutely.
Because okay, I can get behind like one of those pistols, I guess, like the one-shot ones for safety. But I just don't understand why. And you tell me you're feeling. You know, I want to learn, but like, why would somebody need one of the ones?
So the interesting thing is, and I think this is like a misconception among like a lot of liberals, is that none of these guns do like that. I mean, they can shoot relatively fast, but actually it would be a lot easier for me. Let me give you a good example. If I really wanted to, obviously I'm not a violent person. I would never want to fucking kill anyone for any reason other than self-defense. But if I really wanted to go like harm a group of people, this would probably be the hardest one, or I would say easiest one to do it with, the one that you said people should have. Whereas it would be a lot harder for me to use this one and take a bunch of people out. So I think that's the misconception, is people think that, you know, and I get it. If you don't know a lot about guns, I get that, like, the bigger the gun, the scarier it might look, but it's actually the opposite in a lot of cases. I could take people out a lot easier with the smaller one and a lot faster, whereas that one shoots, you know, slower. And
is that the one that, like, are these kind of guns that people are using in mass school shootings and that kind of stuff, where they're getting to put a bunch of rounds in super fast before police can come, you know?
Some of these, yeah. But the reality is that we do live in a world where people have access to that kind of stuff, and I want good people to have access to those weapons just as much as bad people. And so, like I said, if anyone comes up in my fucking space, it's a wrap.
So you're saying that even if it was illegal, that the bad people would still have access to the guns?
Oh, for sure. If you're, you know, there's a whole, like, look at, like, gun-free zones. Those are always the zones that are shot up because no one has guns to protect themselves. Whereas people don't shoot up military bases. People don't shoot up, you know, places where people are actually going to be armed. And, you know, some of the most populous, like, Democrat cities, which have the most, you know, the harshest gun laws, are the ones that get all the shootings. So clearly it's less of a gun legality problem, because if you're willing to commit the crime of murder, why would you care about committing the crime of, like, having a gun without a license? Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. Yeah.
So you're from California, right?
Mm-hmm. I grew up in, like, a really crappy, like, little town where I was, like, the only it. It was not a fun childhood. It definitely prepared me for, like, the hate I do now, the hate I get now. My mom took it as a reason to defend me. Like, she took it as, like, okay, I have a child who's, like, different and special, and I'm going to defend him against people in our town and people in our family that are against it. My dad's side of the family, they fully disowned me once I became an adult, but they were like, I was, like, on my way out of their life as a teenager, basically.
Your dad too, or just your dad's family?
Not my dad. My dad died when I was 19.
Oh, wow.
Which was a year before my transition. He never, like, knew me as Blaire, which has always been, like, a weird thing, because it's like, today's Father's Day, like, literally today as we're filming this, and it's always a weird day for me because I didn't have a good relationship with my dad. It was we would argue all the time, we would fight. There was a time where I punched him in the face, but he would talk shit about the way I looked, and he would, like, be like, oh, look, why are you wearing a fucking purse? Like, he wouldn't call me a faggot. He'd be like, oh, you fucking homo, whatever. But, like, no one else would say it around him, which I kind of, in a weird way, appreciated. I do think in my heart of hearts that his biggest fear was just that I had no direction in life, because before I transitioned, I was a disaster. I was not on a good path. I was a delinquent. I was fighting all the time. I was drinking underage. I was going to parties. I was, like, not on a good path. And I think that scared him more than anything. It was like, where is this child that is wearing makeup and going out and drinking and fighting? Where is this leading?
How did he pass? You mind me asking?
Cancer. It was very sudden. I was actually out of town, and I got the call that he was in the hospital, and my mom didn't want to tell me exactly what for, and kind of downplayed it and made it seem like it wasn't a big deal. So I didn't, rush home, because I was like, okay, it sounds like it's not good because he's in the hospital, but not necessarily rush home type of thing. And by the time I got back from my just, like, weekend trip, he had, like, passed that morning I got home. So never got to say goodbye or anything. When you have a parent that passes away that you don't have a good relationship with, you try not to romanticize the past and be like, oh, he was an amazing dad, because he was really shitty to me in a lot of ways. But what he did instill in me was very hard work. What he did instill in me was some of those Republican values, because he was more Republican, my mom was a Democrat, and the concept of, like, no one's coming to save you. You figure your life out, you get it together, you work hard, you be honest, and you take care of your responsibilities. Whereas my mom was the opposite. My mom was a meth head. Every member of my immediate family was addicted to drugs.
Wow.
So my dad was too, but my dad was addicted to painkillers because he had a bad back. So it wasn't necessarily the same thing as, like, meth or whatever, but that was still affected our relationship a lot and his behavior. My brother, God even knows that he was on, but he was on all kinds of stuff. My mom recently told me that she was on meth my entire childhood, on and off.
You had no idea?
No. I knew my brother was, I knew my dad was on drugs, but I didn't know my mom was. So that was a bit of a blow.
How did you feel when she told you that?
It made sense, because, a lot of the behaviors were explained.
Here's where it happens.
This is where the podcast channel happens.
Wow.
So this is where I film the Blaire White project, which is my podcast. So I have my main channel, which has over 1 million subscribers, and then my podcast channel, which is sort of like my passion project right now, that I'm trying to grow, has about 300K and some change.
Oh, just a measly 300K.
Yeah, I mean...
That's huge. I have like 88K.
Thank you. Well, you're on your fucking way up.
Thank you.
So this is where I run my fucking mouth and get canceled every week.
I actually feel like I watch your podcast channel more than I watch your regular channel.
A lot of people say that, because my podcast channel and my podcast in general, I'm a lot more, like, unfiltered.
Mm-hmm.
I try not to put any edits in it, so it's an hour of just me fucking running this mouth, whereas my main channel video is a lot more curated. It's a lot more like, I'm saying this, and then I cut here, and then I say this, whereas this one I'm just sitting down and like, all right, bitches, Let's fucking talk.
When you started to transition, did you think about your dad and how he would think about that?
No, I don't think I even had processed my dad's death until like maybe 6 years after he died. It was really weird. Like, I'm kind of like that with a lot of shit in my life. Like, when it happens, I'll just be like, oh, that's traumatic. Gonna shut that off for a while, deal with that later, and then I eventually deal with it. It was the same with me being raped. I was raped actually the same year my dad died. God. Great year, 2012, shout out.
I'm so sorry that happened to you.
Yeah, it is what it is. It was my first date with a man ever. I had met a guy online, and I wasn't medically transitioning, but I was starting to present more as Blaire. So I was growing my hair out, I was dressing a little less like crazy punk rock and a little more like womanish, I guess. And I got in the car with a piece of shit who, instead of taking me somewhere nice and treating me nice, took me to a public park at night and rapped me against a tree. And that, wow. How much do I really want to say about that? Fuck it, let's just say it. This guy rapped me against a tree. It was extremely painful. I was a virgin, by the way. I had never experienced sex.
Oh my God.
And I, from the pain, passed out and woke up in his arms being carried back to his car. So, and this guy was like married, I found out, and had kids, and I've always thought like, why didn't I like try to ruin his life or something? Like, why didn't I retaliate? I totally get why people don't go to the police and shit. Partly because when something like that happens, it takes so long to even process it and realize what it was. And it sounds so crazy because what happened to me is like textbook definition of the most black and white definition. Like, you are saying no, and this man is physically overpowering you. And yet I was still afterwards convincing myself it really wasn't, because it was a date and because I chose to go there, and you go through all the motions. So I totally get why when it is like a little more of a gray area, even like maybe a date, was I drunk, was I not, I totally get why people don't go to the police, because mine was just legit and I still convinced myself it wasn't.
God, that is horrible. And to lose your virginity that way, I mean,
yeah.
Did you carry that baggage with you for a long time? I mean, now you're saying it is what it is, but how do you actually feel about it?
If I'm honest, there are definitely some lingering effects from it. For a while, I was definitely distrustful of men, didn't want to be around men, didn't like men, and that faded. Now I'm not. Now I'm very comfortable with men, which is good. But I do have some issues getting like super intimate with men, and some issues feeling like vulnerable with men. So like I'm always needing to be the person like in power in a dynamic with a man, which isn't necessarily like always a positive thing, especially with men, because they don't like that. But I think that if I were to break that down, that probably is from partly that. I think it's a natural consequence of like, I never want to feel powerless again. So if I'm with a man, I'm gonna be fucking in power, unless I really, really trust you, which does not come easy.
How about your mom? Are you close with your mom?
My mom is like such a sore subject, because I don't think she necessarily knows how to handle the fact that I am a public figure, and that doesn't mean that I'm going to necessarily support her financially.
I think that is a very prevalent conversation amongst people that make a lot of money, is, you know, their family.
Or are perceived to make a lot of money, because I do well and I take care of myself and I take care of like my immediate household, and like I have money left over for fun stuff, but that doesn't mean that I'm a fucking gazillionaire.
So the money is normally the issue that drives you guys apart again, and then you guys connect again, and then money drives you apart again, and that kind of ongoing back and forth.
And I hate that that's a thing, because I'm not gonna say I don't give a fuck about money, because everyone needs money, but like I definitely don't give a fuck about it more than people and family and love. So it sucks that, you know, that can come in between people.
Do you sometimes look back on your life and miss like the simpler times before you were Blaire White, you know, before this huge persona and the notoriousness of everything, you know? Do you?
Hell fucking no. Hell no. My life sucked before I was like transitioned and on YouTube and whatever. Like, ew.
Where do you see like the longevity of your career? Do you see yourself just keep going on YouTube, keep, you know, making the Blaire White project, or do you want to take it to the next level?
I'll be president someday.
That's what you want?
I already know I am gonna be.
Wow. If that happens, which it will, because you're manifesting it, it'll be crazy to have that on this video.
Yeah, people will look back on this for sure.
I was listening to a podcast, I think your podcast, on my plane flight here, and you were talking about how you were saying, what is there to be proud about? Why do we need a month to be proud? Is that, do you feel that way? You don't feel proud to be trans?
No. I don't think it's like an accomplishment.
And I get what you were saying. I get what you were saying. You're saying that like we should just be able to live our lives. You know, you're trans, you're gay, it doesn't matter. We should just move on with it and not harp on it. But I think about, you know, the people before us that have spoken up and fought for our rights to get married or to transition or whatever. And I'm proud of them, and that makes me proud to be a gay man. You know what I mean? Because of my generations before me that have fought. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that in 2023, there's just a massive overexposure of the gay stuff. I don't like that it's been so corporatized, because I think that it feeds into a backlash that wouldn't necessarily be there. Part of the thing that I sort of have learned from moving to Texas and like my social group being exclusively like straight people is the big disconnect is like, why is it everywhere all of the time sort of thing, which I think is the fault of the media, because nothing brings clicks like the trans shit, especially. Nothing brings clicks like the trans shit. So that's why like trans has become really like the cultural topic, which is crazy because it's such a small group of people. When gay marriage was won, I think a lot of people expected there to be sort of like a, okay, we're here thing. And I think that there was an incentive for GLAAD and all these LGBT groups that became, you know, multi-billion-dollar groups based off of that fight, raising money and stuff, which I agree they should have raised that money and they should have fought for gay marriage, because I believe in gay marriage. But since then, there's been like an invention of new problems. And a lot of those problems to keep the money going, basically. It's like, now we have to talk about bathrooms, I have to talk about pronouns, I have to talk about this. And there's like this doubling down in the LGBT community that I think like the outside world doesn't appreciate. So when they see like pictures of Leah Thomas like dominating like women's sports, and it's so obviously an issue, but no one in the community says anything, that makes people be like, okay, this community's on one right now. Am I proud to be trans? No, I don't think it's an accomplishment. Am I proud that I funded my transition? For sure.
Do you want to have kids?
I go back and forth on that. Like I live a very full life. I don't know if I necessarily want to sacrifice my freedom for like a kid, which sounds selfish, but you have to keep that selfishness in mind when you think of having kids, because you do lose a lot of your freedom.
If you did have a kid and, you know, at 6 years old, they're starting to experience the same kind of gender identity issues that you were experiencing, how would you handle that?
Oh, Lord. My God. I think I would handle it differently than my parents. I would let my child be themselves up until the extent of medicalization. So like, you want to wear what you want to wear? Absolutely. You want to, you know, express yourself visually or through fashion or through, you know, makeup? Have at it. Medicalization, no. Anywhere between 60 to 90% of children who claim they have gender dysphoria grow out of it through puberty. So in all likelihood, that's going to be something that dissipates. Those instances where the dysphoria continues into adulthood, that's when you can start talking about transition. And even at like, you know, 17, if they were having real talks about it, we would still wait until 18, but it would be, we can start maybe putting some things in motion, but you're not taking a pill or signing up for a surgery until you're 18.
I appreciate your honesty.
Yeah, and because it's like, why would you do anything permanent and irreversible to someone who has a 60 to 90% chance of growing out of it? I just can't reconcile that in my head.
This has all been so fascinating, and I feel like, I don't know, every time I watch your video or talking today, I learn a lot, and I really appreciate you being open with me about your life, and I know you keep your private life very private, and I just feel thankful that you trusted me with that, because I think it's going to show a different side of you than a lot of the audience has seen.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, at the end of the day, I am so comfortable being, you know, the divisive person that I am. I think that a lot of people maybe think that I like have a hard time with that. I like truly don't. People either like love me or hate me, and I actually love that because I want to be around people that love me. And so if you're fucking with me, I know you really fuck with me, whereas, you know, if you hate me, I'll believe you. This was so fun.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you. We'll be in touch.
Yeah, of course. I feel like you got me to talk about a lot of crazy shit.
Bye. I'll talk to you soon, okay? Bye.